was encouraged to do. It was something I just decided at the end of last week needed to be done, which is providing a space for people who have experienced pregnancy or infant loss, or people who feel that they are grieving in silence and that no one understands. Okay, I am going to start by kicking us off in prayer. For those of you who don't know me, I am a faith-based life coach, and I like to start with prayer. And so here we go. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for our time together and just the moment to acknowledge and honor the babies and the losses in our life that we have experienced, and those souls who have been gone too soon, and to acknowledge the grief and the hurt and the pain that moms and dads are and family members have experienced with this sort of loss. We ask for your comfort, we ask for your peace, and ultimately your guidance for the future. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay, so for those of you who do not know me, I'm going to give a quick introduction and a really big fat disclaimer. Okay, so my name is Emily Tanner. I was widowed in 2021, just 3 weeks short of what would have been our 20th wedding anniversary. And my husband and I were sick with COVID that morphed to double pneumonia. And ultimately, he would go into ICU for 11 days, and I would be called in to be told that he was brain dead and that tests need to be run, decisions need to be made. And ultimately, I ended up having to explain to my 4 teenagers that we had together that their dad was not going to come home. And so I have been on this crazy, wild ride over the last over 4 years now of trying to figure out life as a widow and a solo mom, and trying not only to learn about grief, to figure it out for myself, but to help all the people that continue to reach out to me, asking for help, asking what they can do to support other people who are going through grief. And there was a time, I'm not going to share the lengthy version of my story, but there was a time where I wanted to give up. I felt like I could see myself dying from a broken heart because life wasn't getting better. And I felt hollow on the inside. And I didn't know what the point of any of it was. But I decided for my kids and for my family that I would learn, like stubbornly dig my heels in, learn everything I could about grief, and figure out not only how to get through grief and through the pain, but also how to build a life that I could enjoy again. And so I didn't know if that was going to be possible, but ultimately I would end up talking with thousands of widows, interviewing hundreds of them, launching the Brave Widow Show, which is an online podcast, and then founding the Brave Widow coaching and community, which I have been running for the past almost 3 years now. And I'm happy to share I do love my life again today. I do experience moments of joy and peace and gratitude in a way that I never really thought was possible in the beginning. And I get to help now widows and widowers navigate grief, heal their heart, and start to rebuild their life completely from scratch. And I did end up, people always want to know. So I did end up getting remarried just a year and a half ago and gaining a bonus son in the process. And I've done all sorts of wonderful, amazing things like becoming a real estate investor, traveling to 5 new countries, getting to meet Dave Ramsey in person and thanking him for the work that he had done, which allowed me to be in the position that I was in when I was widowed. Today, I want to talk with you about the grief that people experience with pregnancy and infant loss, because October is actually pregnancy and infant loss remembrance, and October 15th, which is today, is pregnancy and infant loss like Remembrance Day. And I didn't really see a space for that. And I'm going to give you a really big disclaimer, okay? I've not personally experienced pregnancy loss or infant loss. Many of my clients have, many of them multiple times through miscarriages. And so to me, what I have learned from working with my clients and from people that I know in my life who have experienced this is that it often is a sort of grief that people expect you to move on from and move on from quickly, where people tell you things like, you're still young, you could have another one. Here in 6 weeks, you can try again. You have other kids, so you just need to be grateful for them. Or things like, oh, God just needed another little angel. God just needed that little human being, so he just called him up to heaven. Things that are not helpful, things that are hurtful, and things that are well-meaning, but leave people feeling like they are suffering in silence, that they must grieve in silence, and that they are ultimately left unseen, unheard, and lonely. And so, one of the programs that I use in my coaching program, one of the tools that I use is right here called the Grief Recovery Method. And as part of Grief Recovery Method, one of the things that we do is we make a literal graph of all of the losses that we've experienced throughout our life. And many of my clients who may be in their 40s, 50s, 60s, even 70s, when they're making their graph, they look at the pregnancy losses they've had, or at times the stillbirth or the infant loss that they have had. And they're like, wow, I am just now realizing at this point in my life, I never really got to grieve that loss. And it still weighs heavy on my heart. And that maybe I try to distract myself. Maybe I was working, so I just had to keep working and had to keep going back and didn't realize that I wasn't able to process this loss. And so today, even though I have not personally experienced this sort of loss, this moment is in honor of those of you who have. And if that's you, and if you feel like sharing, just put in the chat, like, yep, that's me, or yep, I know somebody that is close to me that's experienced this. And what I'm going to share with you today is I'm going to talk about the pressure to move on, like the pressure we feel from society to move on, the unhelpful comments that people share, how to navigate grief when it feels like you're supposed to suffer in silence. And then I'm going to share some gentle ways that you can remember and keep connection with your baby. And here in this space, and what I teach my clients to do is that in these losses, we remember the babies, we remember the names, we say their names. And our goal isn't to rush the grief process. Our goal isn't to, once the body is physically healed, that means you should be over it. Our goal is to be honest in grief and to acknowledge that people have different grief timelines. And especially as we may have parents, right? We have a man and a woman who are both grieving. One of the biggest myths that we learn about grief is that we need to be strong for the other person. In fact, this book was written by a man who lost a baby. Okay. John James, he lost a baby, and he believed that he was supposed to be strong for his wife, and she believed she was supposed to be strong for him. And so what happened is they both were focused on being strong for each other, which meant they weren't honest with each other about the hurt and about how they felt about grief. And over time, they stopped communicating, they stopped connecting, and ultimately their relationship would end up in divorce, as many relationships do when there is a loss of a child. People would tell them, oh, you could have another one, or you should be grateful you already have one daughter. You should be grateful you at least have one. Or people would say, God needed this little angel. Like, it's in here in the book. And so that is where this whole program comes from, the heart of a grieving dad, from the heart of somebody who experienced divorce because he didn't know how to handle grief. He wasn't taught, as many of us are not taught how to handle grief. Okay. And so if you take nothing else away from this today, if you are in a relationship or you are married and you are both grieving, is the goal is not to be strong for each other. The goal is to communicate, is to be there for each other, is to recognize that you might be on different grief timelines. So maybe mom feels a certain way about it and she's in a certain place where she's feeling more joy, and the dad is really struggling with sadness and overwhelm. And so we want to communicate and be there for each other. But we know that grief is not a linear, doesn't follow a linear timeline, right? And so there isn't a point where it's, oh, I feel better, better, better. Now I'm over it now. No, it's up and down. And the volatility gets smaller, and it can feel better over time with action. But just giving it time alone, just waiting for things to go feel better isn't what helps us through grief. Okay, one of the things I wanted to cover today is the pressure that people feel to move on. So we know grief has no deadline, it has no timeline. And there are always the questions, especially in the space that I'm in, of how long is it going to feel this way? It's been 3 years, it's been 14 years, it's been 6 months. What is the point where I'm just never going to feel grief about this? And answering the timeline question is really hard because everyone not only has had a different experience, but everyone's had a different life. And so if you've experienced a lot of loss or a lot of trauma, the loss of a spouse, the loss of a baby, the loss of an infant, that can reopen a lot of that past loss and past trauma that has never been processed. And so that grief journey looks very different than someone who relatively has experienced very little loss in their life, and this is their first major one that they're going through. It also is different because people do things differently. Like I had someone message me the other day or comment on a video and say, it's been 14 years and it feels the same as it felt the first year. I don't feel any better. It feels worse. When is it going to get better? And so my response to that is there's no perfect answer. I can't promise you in 6 months or a year that you're going to feel better. You're going to feel a shift, but it's not going to take as long as you think to feel a shift in grief. The key, though, is that, and one of the things that I learned from Grief Recovery Institute is that the key to recovery and grief is action, not time. So time is a component, time's an ingredient in the recipe, but time alone does not heal our wounds, even though we say that. Time heals all wounds. Time makes everything better. That's incorrect. Time helps. It takes time. It's like going to the gym or any other goal. Like any goal that you're working towards does take time, but if you have a goal or you have a desire and you only give it time and you don't work towards that goal, then time alone isn't going to get you there. It's the same thing with grief. Time alone isn't going to magically allow you to feel better. So we can feel, especially with this type of loss, people can feel that societally there's a pressure of you need to keep moving forward. You need to move on. It's been long enough. It's been a year. It's been 2 years. You just got to pick yourself up by the bootstraps and keep going. Have you guys ever felt that way? Put in the chat if you have felt that way in grief. Hey, Brad. Good to see you. And Patty. Hey, Tammy. Yeah. So, especially with the loss of pregnancy or the loss of an infant, or someone told me the other day, the comment to them was, it's not like you knew them very long, right? Like you could just try again and have another one. That's the same thing. That's another myth that I learned about in grief recovery method is that you can replace the loss. So like for me, when I lost a pet as a child, my parents are like, oh, don't be too sad because we'll get you another pet. And it's, oh, okay, by getting a new pet, now all of a sudden I'm not sad about the old pet. It's not my parents were being mean. That's just how we think about grief. Oh, you had a pregnancy and you miscarried. That's okay. You'll just get pregnant again. It'll be fine. Oh, okay, yeah. But no, that child probably had a name. That child probably, I already had a picture of what that was going to look like, what it was going to be like to bring them home, what was it going to be like to raise them, and if they were going to look like me, or they're going to look like their dad, or they're going to, I already had these pictures in my mind of how it was going to be, and now all of that is lost to me. So, one of the things that we want to do in navigating grief is to realize that we are moving forward. We want to take steps forward, but we take our person with us. We take that emotional relationship that we have with that baby with us into the future. Moving forward doesn't mean we're moving on or that we're leaving them behind or that we forget about them or that we have to say goodbye to that relationship and to that person. That's not what we do at all. We can say goodbye to the pain. We can say goodbye to the hurt. We can say goodbye to the dreams and hopes that we had for the future that now are not going to happen. We can say goodbye to those things. But we can still continue a relationship with that baby, with that infant. So I'm curious for those of you where it's been, I'm curious to know from you all one way that you have stayed connected to your baby post loss. So put that in the chat if you have something that helps you feel connected to your baby. And if you haven't had anything because you feel like you don't deserve to, or because people wouldn't understand, or you just haven't had any ideas, I have some ideas for you here at the end. But I'm just curious if there has been something that's helped you feel connected to your loss and to your baby. What was that? What that looks like? And if you had already decided on a name for your baby, or if you would want to share that, or even your initials that you had picked out for your baby. Okay, so we all know that we in grief get a lot of unhelpful comments, right? People will say, oh, at least this, at least that. You're still young, you can try again, or you already have other kids. Like, how many kids does one person need, right? People can say very hurtful and unhelpful things. So I just want to give you some ideas if you're supporting someone who is going through this loss of what you could say instead. So one might be, I'm so sorry for your loss. I wish you had more time. Or I'd love to hear their name if you would want to share more. How can I support you, whether it's meals, errands, or just sitting with you? And as someone who's grieving, when people make these unhelpful comments, some of the things that you could say in return, some self-advocacy. We, and I'll preface this by saying we tend to get really frustrated with people because they say the wrong things, they don't know how to support us, they disappear, they don't show up for us, they just pretend like we need to move on. They don't see that we are really hurting on the inside. And it's easy for us to become bitter and angry and resentful and hurt because those things happen. And also, I try to give people grace because they just don't know. Most people just don't know how to be there for you, how to show up for you, how to support you in the way that you want to be supported. And so you get to decide if you want to educate some of the people around you, advocate for yourself and what you need. And so you might say something like, look, I know that you mean, or I know that you're trying to make me feel better, but when you say at least, whatever it is they said, that's really hard to hear right now. What would help is this. Or you might say, please say their name. Hearing it is a gift to me. And as people love to give unsolicited advice and they love to have their opinions, especially in something they have no expertise in, you can also say something like, look, I'm not taking any advice today. If you want to help me, listening would be helpful. And for those of you who are supporting someone who's grieving, a lot of times I get asked, what should I say, or what should I do, or how can I help them feel better? And the answer is that you can't. You can't take away the pain. You can't, they're not broken. You don't need to fix them. It's not your job to make them feel better. And so, what people need who are grieving and who feel invisible and lonely is they need to know that they are seen and that they're not alone. They need someone to sit with them in the grief and be a witness to their suffering. And so sometimes I will tell people like the best thing that you can say to someone who is grieving is to just listen, just say nothing. Like even Job, his friends sat with him for what, 7 days and said nothing. They sat with him. And I'm like, yes. Now, after 7 days, I think they kind of lost their patience. We know how that story goes. But I'm like, wow, what friends? Like what an amazing friend to sit with you as a grieving person in silence for 7 days. Wow. That's pretty incredible. And maybe that's not practical for where you are, but people who are in grief, they don't need to be taken out of their home to go do fun things. They don't need to be cheered up. They don't need to be made to feel better. They don't need you to tell them that it's going to be okay. They need you to, when they haven't showered for 3 days and they're sitting in their old pajamas with a box of a bazillion tissues and the TV like mindlessly playing in the background, they need you to just sit on the couch with them and cry with them or let them know that you're here. Like it's okay. And then if you're able to do things like wash the dishes, mow the lawn, help with practical things, that just takes it to another level. So, how can you navigate grief when it feels like you're supposed to suffer in silence? Have any of you guys felt that way? Like you're supposed to just suffer in silence? You gotta toughen up. You gotta be strong for other people. I think, especially in this situation, one thing I hear is that the husband, the boyfriend, like the man in this situation is, oh, you got to be strong for your wife, right? She's falling apart. You can't allow her to be that person. You can't also let her see that you're upset too. And that's just wrong. It's just a thought error. It's just a belief, a myth, a belief that is incorrect. And so, how do you navigate grief when you're supposed to suffer in silence? Many times in the widow community, where I spend a lot of time, we lose our social circle. Our family and friends just disappear. They go quiet. We don't hear from them. And there are a lot of reasons why that could be. One is it's uncomfortable for them. One is they're afraid they're going to say the wrong thing, like they're afraid to make you cry. Whereas someone who, if someone were more well equipped to help a person in grief, they might know that it's okay. If you cry, it's okay. It's not like you forgot that you experienced this trauma. It's not like you forgot that this baby who meant the world to you, you will not get to raise in the future. It's not like you forgot about it and they're going to say something that reminds you, but people are afraid of saying the wrong things. And if they say something or they ask how you really are and you start crying, then they feel bad. Instead of recognizing that crying and is actually healthy and helpful. I recently had someone on the podcast that talked about how tears release a natural painkiller within your body, like a chemical. Don't ask me to pronounce it. I don't remember exactly what it's called. It was very complicated. But tears can release a natural chemical in your body that's a painkiller. And so when we shove down our emotions and we swallow that lump in our throat and we refuse to cry, we're actually depriving ourselves of feeling that natural painkiller chemical. That's why sometimes if you have a really good cry afterwards, you're like, oh, I feel a little bit better. So that's why people tend to go quiet. It's very helpful for you to join, be part of some sort of community of grief, whether it's other parents who have lost a child, whether it is a grief share group, a grief recovery group, a advocacy group, like whatever it is important for you to be in a community of other people who in their own way understand, because then you don't have to explain. You don't have to explain why a miscarriage is hurtful and why even if you were to get pregnant 3 months later, that doesn't solve the hurt, doesn't take away the pain. Like they know this. People in those groups that are on this journey, they know that. You might choose one or two people that you feel like are safe and have a process where you can text them and say, you know what, today I'm just having a really hard day today, or today feels really heavy. Can you check in with me? I'm going to share with you some ways that you can remember your baby. You can keep a connection with them. But I would love to hear from you if there are things that you have done to feel close to your baby or to stay connected with them. Anything that you found helpful, I would love for you to share that in the chat so that other people can learn from that as well. So these were just some ideas that I searched and or have heard of that I thought might actually be helpful. Yolanda, endorphins. Yeah, I can't remember the name. It's like Luca, I don't know. Totally gonna butcher it. Okay, so here are some ideas, some ways that you can remember your baby and keep a connection with them. You could light a candle. And here's the thing, don't worry about writing down a list of all of these things. I'm going to include them in the notes of the replay on YouTube. So you'll have them if you want to go back. But what I would encourage you to do today is just to listen. And if you hear one idea that resonates with you, or an idea that gives you another idea that resonates with you, that you take that and use that one. Like you don't have to implement all these things, okay? You're not a bad parent if you don't. Okay, some ideas. If you have 5 minutes, then you might light a candle and say their name out loud or say their initials out loud and share a sentence. Like you might say, today I'm going to remember you for this. You might put a hand over your heart and close your eyes and take 3 slow breaths and just picture like a favorite detail. Maybe it was a blanket you had picked out. Maybe it was the ultrasound. Maybe it was like their little toes that you got to see or that you got to feel. Maybe it's playing a song. Maybe there's a song that reminds you of them or that you had decided this is going to be their song. Maybe it's just playing a song and letting yourself just feel, like letting yourself miss them and feel sadness that they're not physically here with you. Someone commented on both the due date and the miscarriage dates. I take short time in prayer to God. Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. If you have 15 or 30 minutes, you could write them a short letter and you could write them a letter that says, I wish we had, and list out some things that you wish that you would have been able to do. And you could end that letter by saying, I will carry you by, and maybe share a way that you're going to continue to carry them with you. You could have a keepsake box where you have their ultrasound prints. If there's a hospital bracelet, you could have that in there. Maybe a ribbon with their name or their initials, or a note that you write for them, or maybe it's a box of love letters that you write to them. You could have a living symbol, which is maybe you have a plant that you take care of or a flower that you put in a vase. Or one idea that I read about was having a special bowl and having a small stone for every time you have a memory or you have a special thought about them, like a remembrance about them and what you wanted that to be, that you put a rock in the bowl and have a collection of that. Some ongoing, quieter rituals that you could do would be having a wearable, they call like a touchstone. So that would be like a bracelet, a ring, a necklace that kind of links you to them. And then you can just touch it whenever you want to think about them or remember them, or it just gives you something if you're a little more hands-on, gives you something to just touch when you're thinking about them or you need a little steadiness. On due dates, birthdays, or milestones. You could do something like lighting a candle, a sky lantern, or an alternative like bubbles, or going on a sunrise walk, or like someone said, like going to prayer to God in prayer, just something that allows you to feel like you're honoring and acknowledging their life. You can have shared language, like a phrase that you use with trusted people. Today is a heavy day. Please hold space for me. Today is going to be a hard day. Please just, I might not be myself. Please show grace and patience. It's just a hard day. It's a sad, I would tell my kids, like, I'm just having a sad day. With your spouse, partner, family, or friends, some things that you could do would be to have a little circle, if it's 2 or 3 minutes, and everybody could share a word or something, a phrase that describes what this child means to them and what they meant. Siblings could pick a sticker, a flower, or a drawing that they want to send to the baby. And we can remind the siblings that all of their feelings are okay. And you can ask them just to have a moment of silence with you. You could, if from a faith perspective, have a blessing or a memory, excuse me, a blessing or a prayer. So you could say, may your memory be a blessing to me. May I love you and how I live each day. You can use nature as your sanctuary and sit in the sun, sit under a tree, sit out. I used to sit out in the memorial garden for Nathan and just notice anything that might feel like a hello or a wave or a God wink or whatever you want to call it, which is like a gentle breeze, a butterfly, light that shines through a certain way, a heart on a leaf, like anything that you could just smile and let that be something that's meaningful to you. Patty says planting a tree or placing a memorial plaque or stone at a place that means something like a flower conservatory or zoo. Oh, that's a beautiful idea. I love that. And then you could revisit that place and see their name there or their initials there every time. Yeah. The point is that there are ways to stay connected with your baby and with the relationship that you had. And even though society may tell you, like, oh, it's been long enough, or you need to, they don't come out and say you need to get over it, but that's the underlying message. It's been a couple of years, it's time you just move on, or you have kids, you have someone else that needs your time and attention, like you need to be strong for them and you need to show up for them, those types of things. But the reality is that society is just not educated in grief or how to help people in grief. And so staying connected with a baby or a child that you love that is gone is not wrong. Staying connected, you will always, one of the things I love about grief recovery method, you will always have an emotional connection and relationship to the person that is gone. And so you will see it in the moments when you go to Disney World. You'll have that experience of, oh, I wish he or she were here. When you go to someone's high school graduation, you'll be thinking about the graduation that your child doesn't experience. So you're not wrong. It's not incorrect to feel like you want to continue to have that relationship. And so, one of the things I just want to remind you today is that connection doesn't require big ceremonies. You don't have to do a whole get everybody together a couple times a year. Like the connection will live in those small and honest moments, in those small, just daily life moments. And so, what you can do is to choose one thing that feels gentle and comforting and allows you to just feel all of the things. Feel the sadness, feel the joy. Maybe you got to hold them for a period of time. Maybe they were living for a period of time. You get to feel joy for some of those moments and sadness all at the same time. And it's okay. It can be enough. All right. So, for those of you that have just recently joined, I am going to share the replay of what I covered today. But we talked through the importance of honesty and communication with the person you're in a relationship with as you're supporting each other through grief. Your job is not to be strong for each other. Your job is to support each other and to be honest. We talked about the pressure to move on and why grief doesn't follow a timeline, how there are going to be lots of unhelpful comments and what people can say instead, and how you can advocate for yourself and you can have boundaries. How to navigate grief when it feels like you're supposed to suffer in silence, and some gentle ways to remember and keep connection with your baby. And so I want to thank you for spending some time with me today. I want you to know that you are seen, you are cared for, your grief is valid, and it matters. And for people that I inevitably get asked, where should people start if they have not done anything that has helped them with grief, or they feel like they're stuck in grief, or they just want help taking that exact next step? What can people do? So I shared this book. This program here is called the Grief Recovery Method. I shared this grief recovery handbook. This is the tool in my toolbox that I use with widows and widowers and even people outside of that who are grieving. This book covers 40 different types of losses. And look, whether or not you do it with me doesn't matter to me. Like, you can go online, grief recovery method. You can find people who do it in person, people who offer it online. You could get this book on Amazon. It doesn't matter. If you haven't done it yet, go do it. It will cover losses that you've experienced all throughout your life, even starting at childhood, that go beyond the loss of a person, that go to loss of safety, loss of a job, loss of a pet, loss of the things that all the losses we've experienced that no one has taught us how to process. People tell us things to get us to stop being sad, essentially. And what we really need is a way of processing the pain and a way of having tools to navigate grief ongoing. So that when we struggle, when we feel stuck, when we have difficult relationships in our lives, whatever it is, this will give you tools to help you. Doesn't solve all your problems overnight, but this will really give you tools to help you. So go check this out. It's called Grief Recovery Method. It's the only program outside of my coaching that I will put my name behind, that I pay money for every year to be maintain my certification and my license to be able to teach it because I believe in it that much. So this is a great place to start if you're like, I don't know, I need a place to start. Or maybe you've tried, I have plenty of people who've tried counseling, they've tried grief groups, and for whatever reason, it hasn't resonated with them. I encourage you to do that to take care of your heart. The loss that you have experienced to some people might seem small or insignificant, but I want you to hear from me that it's not. That the loss of this life and the loss of all the dreams you had for the future is monumental. And so I will encourage you to make space to heal your heart and to learn how to navigate grief. Patty says, truly great sharing. Thank you. You are so welcome. Angie says, we often say, girls, if you were here today, and we wonder as a family how our day would have looked if they were by our sides. Oh, I love that. My coach, Dr. Betsy, one of the reasons that I started learning from her and that I went through the Faith-Based Life Coaching Academy is because the podcast I heard her on, she was sharing about her daughter, Fofi, and the story of her loss, which was they were having a big party, family of get together, like a bunch of people over at their house. They were in the pool. They were having a pool party. Her daughter, Fofi, was, I think, 3 at the time. And everybody's laughing. The kids are jumping in the pool. We're all playing. We're all right there. And someone just threw out the question, like, where is Fofi? And then everybody started going, where's Fofi? Where's Fofi? And I look down and my daughter's at the bottom of the pool. And she shares the story so much more eloquently than I ever could. But I remember her on that podcast just retelling the story of how, yes, she had other children, but this loss brought her to her knees, and she's a clinical psychologist. She helps other people with grief, and she was living her life crying and grieving and on the floor of her bedroom. And she said, my husband was like freaked out. If she doesn't know how to handle this, how am I supposed to know how to handle this? And in part of her story, she tells about how she went to their priest and she remembers asking him, does it ever get better? Can people be happy again? And what he told her is that some people can find joy again and some people don't. The biggest difference is that the people who find happiness again choose to, and the people who don't choose not to. And so for her, that started a journey of healing, of learning, of growth, of not giving up hope for the future again while still honoring her daughter's life. And she does a beautiful job of honoring her daughter's life still to this day. And Angie, when you were sharing that in the comments, that really made me think about that, right? Like, even in her family pictures, there's like an imposed picture of Fofi that's there with them. And she thinks about that a lot. And so, hearing her story and then hearing how she could talk with such passion and joy and hope and love for other people. When I heard her on that podcast, I was like, I don't know what this lady's done. I don't know what she's figured out, but I have to have that. Like I got to figure it out. If she can go through all of that and still be full of joy and light and radiate just God, like she radiates God. I was like, I got to figure out like what she's doing because I need that for me. And so I want to just give you hope that even if you're in deep grief now, not as a way of telling you not to be sad, not as a way of telling you like, oh, don't worry because you'll be happy again one day. Not at all. Like you get to feel your grief and be sorrowful and say that life is unfair and all of that. And over here, we have hope that we can have a point where we're not in deep grief every day and we are able to honor the life of this person that we love so dearly. All right. Thank you guys so much for joining me. If this has been helpful to you, if you want help in taking your next steps or navigating grief, I am happy to help you. You're welcome to send me a DM. I do free calls with people all the time to help them figure out where they are in the grief journey and what exact next step is right for them. I'll be sharing the full replay over on YouTube. So if you'd like to see any of the notes, any of the list of ideas, that will all be there waiting for you later today. All right, bye-bye. Being unstuck is one of the top things that I help people in grief with. It's actually very common for people to feel stuck, to feel like they're going backwards, to feel like somehow they fooled themselves that they were doing better and now they're doing worse. I'm actually hosting a free live training tomorrow, October 16th at 1 p.m. Central Time called The 4 Seasons of Grief, where I'm going to share like one simple thing that you can focus on based on what season of grief that you're in. And of course, if you would love me to personally help you get unstuck, just shoot me a DM and I'll be happy to tell you the next step. Getting unstuck. Getting unstuck is one of the top things that I help. Actually, very common for people to feel stuck, to feel like they're going backwards, to feel like somehow they fooled themselves that they were. Okay, so we're gonna get out of there.